Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It is midnight here in the News Zen Zone newsroom. Tonight we're going to be talking to Colleen DeRoche. She's had her children apprehended 4 years ago while she was sick in the hospital, and she hasn't seen them in over a year now. Would you like to say something about yourself?
I'm a mother of 5 children. I'm a grandma of 1, and I haven't met my grandchild yet. And also I'm a registered nurse. That's about it about me.
How many children do you have?
5.
What ages?
10, 12, 13, 15, and 17.
Up until 4 years ago, you had all your children with you, did you not?
Yeah, I did.
What exactly happened? Can you give us a brief description of what happened?
I got sick and had to have emergency surgery. The children were apprehended, given back to my abusive ex-husband, and I've had very little contact with them since. I've been in court hundreds of times. I've spent hours and hours in court in the last 4 years, and I haven't seen the children at all in the last year, even though I have a court order saying that I should be able to. Access ended last year. I traveled all the way to Ottawa to speak with people concerning the child protection system, and I went to every family services and child protection agency that I could, collecting information, as well as homeless shelters and just talking to people on the street and people who'd been in foster care. When I came back from that trip, I was speaking to a professor of social work who I told him I would like to start a support group. He'd already been thinking of, well, not a support group, a discussion group. He had already been thinking of starting a discussion group, and so he called me a little bit later and asked me to facilitate the first chapter of what I call PAC, Parents of Apprehended Children, which is a discussion group about, basically it's people getting together and looking at the commonalities in their stories of how their children were apprehended. It's people talking about what the loopholes are that are keeping parents, at a distance from their children, and it's also talking about how the Ministry of Children and Families, CAS, all the child protection agencies in the States are preventing parents from protecting their own children, from keeping their children safe. There's lots of other websites that have hundreds and hundreds of stories from people in the UK, in the States, in Canada, everywhere about child apprehensions. And there's stories on YouTube. You hear it everywhere. There's a massive problem with the child protection system, and I think that it's time that the people in the States who are fighting to try and see their own children when they know that there's no legal reason why they shouldn't, those people, and the people in the UK who are having a problem, and all the people in Canada who know that there's a problem with the Ministry of Children and Families, should come forward and start meeting face to face and talking about how we can collect our resources together and maybe try to fix this situation so that the hundreds and thousands of parents who aren't seeing their children right now, who don't know how their children are doing, whose children are living on the streets or victims of sexual assault or drug addiction, those parents need to come forward and start meeting with the rest of the parents who are having the same problems, who are going to court and trying to fight against judges that won't let you to defend yourself, who don't care what the allegations are, whether they were true or false, fighting against social workers who are submitting false evidence in court, having to videotape conversations with social workers who are supposed to be protecting our children. We need to start talking about how these laws can be changed so that we stop filling up foster homes and start actually helping some children.
How many children are apprehended here in BC?
Well, I'm not sure how many children are apprehended on a yearly basis, but the trend has been over the last few years that approximately 10,000 children are in care per year per province. And I don't know about the statistics in the States, but I know there's a problem because I've had other people from the States contact me and talk to me about it. I've also had people from the UK talk to me about their problem, and apparently there's problems in other countries. New Zealand, I've met people from that have discussed the problem. It's worldwide, and the children today that are in foster care are at such high risk. Like in the last 10 years, 21% of the children in foster care committed suicide, whether they were in foster care at the time or had left foster care. Over 60% of the children in foster care are labeled as having a mental illness, and I believe, you know, there's a ridiculous amount of children on Ritalin. You know, if they stop to think that after you apprehend a child, depending on the stage of development and the bond that the child has with the mother, all kinds of things, you know, the children is going to go through serious levels of emotional damage, emotional trauma. It's going to prevent them from, you know, growing up.
But it also could
without
cause
stress.
it could also cause them anxiety, and this is
That's what I mean. But instead of putting them on Ritalin or giving them Ativan, I mean, they gave, you know, I've heard of them giving, you know, 11, 12-year-olds Ativan to go to bed at night instead of, you know, I mean, what they really need is their parents, and they don't understand why they're not allowed to be with them. I'm not saying that there aren't cases where it's necessary to...
But isn't this just like
where it's
drugging them into
necessary-
submission?
Just a minute, I'm not saying there's not cases where apprehensions, you know, that they may have, I don't know, there's cases where there is child abuse and it's, you know, pretty bad or whatever, where you, but
a lot of
even in that event, if the parent has made an error, you know, or what about parents who smoke pot? Do they really need to have their children taken away? What about parents who have a few drinks on the weekend? Do they really need to have their children taken away? We need to make sure that the laws and regulations protect children from being separated from their parents unnecessarily, because it does cause a great deal of stress and anxiety, and that's hard to, it depends on the age of the child how bad it's going to be, but afterwards that can lead to all kinds of other things. The high rates of mental illness in foster care, the high rates of drug use in foster care, high rates of pregnancy in foster care, because these kids are hurting. Suicide, runaways. And where are those runaways? Why doesn't the ministry find those runaways and make sure that they are okay? Why do they have 100 to who knows how many open files that they're collecting funds for
Every
children
year.
that are living on the street? And we all know that there are foster kids living out on the street, doing 12-year-olds doing drugs, being prostituted out. We know that that's the case. And they're collecting funding for those children that are in their care.
That's right.